Hello, I'm not going to be in the picture. I'm not feeling up to it right now. But what I want to do, this live stream is specifically to talk about what is going on in Oklahoma. It is a current scam and another round of Oklahoma politicians with the media are trying to scare the world and the public against Native Americans. And it's all politics. And this recording that I have will explain it all. And it's sad what they continue to do to Native Americans, including the leaders who are supposed to be protecting them. So I'm going to go ahead and play this recording. It will explain it all. Okay, I'm going to be calling the Tulsa police, and the reason is I want to get their position on whether or not they can pull over tribal people and issue them tickets. And the reason is because of this presentation in the news that the city of Tulsa has lost its case. They cannot enforce traffic laws. This is being reported by News on 6. And it's a lie. It's an absolute just front. They want the world to think and the people of Oklahoma to think, oh my gosh, we're not safe. Indians can violate traffic laws. And I'm like, yeah, that's a big lie. But this is the thing that they do. This is what they do. This is what they do. They present false things, and the media is a part of it. So let me read to you what the actual ruling says. So there was appeal. The district court, was appealed to the 10th Circuit, and the 10th Circuit denied a stay. So this is a procedure. This is a specific type of application that it denied, okay, and a specific argument of a specific law. But the litigation is not over, okay? But what they said was that the interlocutory posture, the application itself, they were arguing was not proper, but not the content. So I'm going to read to you the actual ruling of August 4th, 2023. This was the Supreme Court of the United States, number 23A73. City of Tulsa, Oklahoma versus Justin Cooper is an application for stay on basically a ruling that they couldn't, you know, issue tickets against Indians. So what they said was, we're not going to grant this because it's not a proper application. It's an interlocutory posture. Okay, and so let's read the very last line that states the position of the justice. This is a statement of Justice Kavanaugh. This is the last sentence that he says. Moreover, as I understand it, nothing in the decision of the Court of Appeals prohibits the city from continuing to enforce its municipal laws against all persons, including Indians, as the litigation progresses. So this litigation is still ongoing. The United States Supreme Court, in his opinion, as he understands it, clearly said, we do not agree that they don't have the authority to enforce municipal laws against Indians. So why is the news media telling the world that they're not safe because, oh my goodness, they're going to be not safe out there because you can't issue traffic tickets. And of course, it was Choctaw Nation who started this fiasco. They're playing games with the whole jurisdiction thing. They're very popular for that. You know, I will show you my federal case where a general counsel for the Choctaw Nation, a former district court federal judge of Eastern Oklahoma, and a former 10th Circuit federal judge, now a civil attorney, also tribal member of Choctaw Nation, argued in federal court that the tribes do not have jurisdiction over non-Indians. So this is a behind the scenes literal attack on tribal sovereignty, tribal jurisdiction, the rights of Native American Indians, while they're presenting to argue for the rights. It's a junk case, is what I call it. And they're just lying. So when they do this, when they present that, oh my gosh, we're not going to be protected. This is what they did back when the whole Castro versus Huertas case, after the McGirt ruling came down, they started. The governor was out there, and oh my gosh, they were just talking about how the state's not safe, 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 the state's not safe. Got all these Indians going to be committing crimes, and we're not going to have jurisdiction over them. It's just a bunch of nonsense. Okay, because they had reversed a case, and the guy was reconvicted. Right? It was an argument over should the state and county prosecute murder of that was done by an Indian, or should the feds? Right? That's what the argument was about. And so they won on this whole scare tactic, trying to make people think that Indians are going to get by with crimes like they're the bad guys, not the non-Indians. Okay. And then also in that case, they stripped the identity of Native Americans. You could be 100% full-blooded by DNA Indian, right? But they stripped identity, saying that the tribal membership is not a ethnic position; it's a political classification. Okay, so you no longer have an actual identity of being an actual blood Indian. Whatever
Yeah,
your blood calculation is. So there's that.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. So are you with the Tulsa Police?
I am.
Oh, hi. How you doing? So yeah, I just had a question in regards to something that I read online. Um, is it the position of the Tulsa Police that they have jurisdiction to issue traffic tickets against tribal members?
So that's a complicated question.
I see.
Yeah, it's in the courts, out of the courts, in the courts, out of the courts type deal. So it's like, depending on what day of the week it is.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of a fiasco. So I'm a former tribal member. I relinquished my rights because of all the political games that I believe are going on. So I just happened to read the actual denial of stay issued by Justice Kavanaugh of the United States Supreme Court. And I'll let you know that I don't know if you read that case or not. I don't know if police actually read the cases or not, but it stated that nothing in the decision of the Court of Appeals prohibits the city from continuing to enforce its municipal laws against all persons, including Indians, as the litigation process. And the reason they denied the stay was because they said it was an interlocutory posture. So without, like, I understand there's continued further proceedings in the district court, meaning it's not over, but it's not like, as I understand it, they're yet as a position that they can formally make a ruling, but they have already held their position that they don't agree with the 10th Circuit. In the last paragraph of the justice, he says his opinion, without saying his opinion because he can't officially formally rule on it, but he says nothing whatsoever in the decision of the Court of Appeals will discontinue the city from being able to enforce its municipal laws against everyone, including Indians. That's literally what it says. Yeah. So I'm just trying to figure out, why are they doing this to Tulsa and to the police to make them think like they don't have this jurisdiction?
Oh man, yeah. I don't know.
Right.
It sure does make it hard to keep the streets safe and
right. Well, I tell you what. You know what I think it really does? I think it hurts the Native Americans, because it makes people feel like, oh my gosh, the Indians are out there running wild, and you can't, issue even traffic tickets against them. You remember back when McGirt ruling was going down and the whole Castro Huertas case was going down, and you had the governor and the politicians, they were saying they're going to commit crimes and we can't hold them accountable, rape, murder, and all this other stuff. You remember that? Like they were making people afraid of Indians. And it wasn't true, because I know News on 6 said that the tribes have jurisdiction over major crimes. And that's not even true, like at all. At all. I don't even know why they're saying that. And get this, you can look my case up in federal court that I filed, and I was filing for jurisdiction for VAWA legislation for the tribes. And I argued before the 10th Circuit, actually I have argued before the 10th Circuit that the tribes have jurisdiction over, only crimes they have is under VAWA. So get this, the Choctaw Nation, the very one who's arguing now that they have jurisdiction, guess what? The general counsel, who's a former 10th Circuit judge for the Choctaw Nation. His name is Michael Burridge. He argued to the district court in Muskogee that no tribes have jurisdiction over non-Indians, period, right? And, but the stuff that he argued was inconsistent with what is being argued now, in my opinion. So I'm just like, are they literally not pulling people over? If they, like, a lot of the tribal people have tags on their cars. So do you guys not even pull them over?
Oh man, so that's situationally dependent. Yeah, I mean we can, but will we? That's the individual officer. The severity of the crime. We can still stop them, but if we stop them, then we're calling for like worse police.
Oh, I
to
see.
Come in
okay.
And work partner with that. So eventually, it'll probably come down to the police department getting cross-deputized.
That's what I was wondering. Are they wanting to put tribal cops out there doing traffic stops? Is that what they're wanting?
So you'll see an increased presence of tribal police in Tulsa. I've seen more of them just within the past month than I've seen in 19 years.
So they're asking. This is about appropriations. They're trying to get more appropriations from the government so they can increase their force, make the public feel safe that all the Indians are going to be held accountable for traffic violations. So they're going to get more tribal cops out there, but they'll only be pulling over tribal people, right?
Does it go both ways? That's the thing.
There it is.
And then call us to help them. And it's just like, I don't know. It's a mess, and it's yet to be sorted out.
It's a constant. Okay, well, you know about the United States versus Cooley case, and this was a big issue because a tribal cop got in trouble for pulling over somebody. This is a fee land. I think it was Arizona. We're trust lands, right? But this was like totally solely operated in fee title. They pulled somebody over and did a search of his car, and he got in trouble. And so that's the United States versus Cooley case. And the United States ruled that they can only temporarily detain them and then turn them over to proper authority. So basically saying they don't have jurisdiction to arrest them, take them in their Indian jail if they have one. And so to me, it's like trying to rehash that issue with tribal police. So people don't want tribal police officers to be pulling over non-Indians because this is not appropriate. But but some states they do that if there's an easement through the reservation on fee land. You know what I mean? But Oklahoma's not fee land though; it's trust land. So why would tribal cops be pulling over non-Indians?
Right, I have no idea. So
we'll
just have to cross that bridge when we get to it.
Well, okay, so I guess because I'm trying to keep abreast of the legal issues and I share with people and stuff. But I just wanted to know if it's true. Basically, what news on media, they're not sharing with what you shared with me. They're just making it seem like they're just not going to be held accountable. They just kind of leave it open for people to use their imagination. You know what I mean? You know how they do that.
Yeah. We can still stop, but we'll call probably tribal police to come and issue any citations, stuff like that.
Okay.
Or for tribal members and stuff like that. But
okay, so that clarifies a lot. You can stop them, so they're not just going to be running wild, getting lost.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Anywho's, but anyways, I think if it does make its way all the way to Supreme Court, Justice Kavanaugh's kind of already gave his position that if he sits on that case, his position is that you got the power. You should read that ruling when they denied the stay. I mean,
yeah, I did this morning.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know that. So you know what I'm talking about then, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
That's a mess.
It is. It's so frustrating, Maybe one day they'll get it together, but yeah. Anywho, and then they declassified people we're not a race anymore. We're just a political classification. I found that insultive.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyways, well, thank you so much for calling me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Feel free to come back anytime.
Yeah, thank you. You have a blessed day.
Thank you too.
Bye-bye. And there you have it. Okay, so he read the case this morning. I was really glad that he told me that because he knows. He knows what's up. So yeah, that's what it sounds like. They're trying to get more appropriations for tribal officers, but just the way they go about it. If you read the news article, they don't tell you, oh, don't worry, people. They're not going to get by with traffic violations. They'll call the tribal police in and they'll give them the ticket. They're not clarifying that. They just leave it like that. And to do that after there was all that drama about the governor out there talking about how the Indians are going to get by with crimes because, a lot of times it used to be the tribal, before they created this Major Crimes Act, some of the tribes had very lenient laws on murder, and it is like that's part of the reason Major Crimes was developed, so that the federal laws will take over those cases, and they have stiff laws. Okay. And so the fact that they included in their not explaining to people that they're not going to be running around getting by with traffic laws violations, them to say that they have major crime jurisdiction, that is so not true. And I'm just so disgusted that they would do that to Indians, to make it's just a scare tactic. And you have to really know and hear all the past articles and videos about how they do that they literally. So I'm going to go back to the recording because I was interrupted by that phone call, but I'm so glad he called while I was streaming. I am so thankful for that. So I'm going to, here we go. Please.
So, yeah.
Let me back this up.
Let me try a different one.
Oh, that's just me calling the police. I was trying to, but he just returned my call. He was really nice. So I was really thankful for that.
Also running around acting like traffic cops. They don't have that jurisdiction. See what I'm saying? So they're making people think, oh my gosh, somebody could commit traffic violations against me, and they could just do whatever they want.
But this cop, he knows better. You heard what he said. He done read that ruling.
Indian people in the state of Oklahoma. Political games.
And like he said, it's a mess. But it doesn't have to be. They make it a mess, and they do it on purpose. There's nothing confusing about the law that they can't get this together.
I've got a question regarding if Indians commit a traffic law, do you guys have authority to?
So I'm gonna fast forward through these calls because I've already resolved that.
Okay, what's your name?
I'll get back to.
Yeah.
Okay, so what am I supervisor give you?
She's the one that had the supervisor call me.
Look up the infant holidays.
Okay, I'll try that number again.
Deceit or crime is one. If you have questions.
I don't know, maybe I clicked the wrong number. What number am I?
Unless you know if your report.
If the Tulsa police, it's not like final ruling, like here's our.
Two.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You're talking to the records department. We can let you know if your report's ready. Those kinds of.
Okay, so I've got a call. They're going to call me. Basically.
That's the one that literally just called me. That's earlier when I was calling them. He called me back.
Anyways, so yeah, I'm very curious to see if the Tulsa police is saying that Native Americans can just commit traffic law violations. That to me doesn't make sense. Oh my goodness. So the ruling that made that comment, it's not like a final ruling, like here's our judgment, but it's basically saying this is our position, okay? But the Supreme Court, absent accepting the way that they presented it, asking for a stay, they filed an interlocutory posture, okay? And they denied that process, but they did deny what they were arguing. But it still has to wait till it gets all the way to the Supreme Court before they can formally rule on it. But they've made their message clear that there's nothing that prohibits them. And I think it's pretty sad that you've got people arguing in a way to the Supreme Court in a way that's not proper, that could have resolved the matter. But this is what I call dive cases. When somebody wants to win on something and they present something to court in a way that they know is going to fail, so that they can present that the argument was lost. And I call those dive cases, and you would be surprised on how often that is done. And anyways, so meanwhile, if you hear anybody in Oklahoma talking about, oh, the Indians are running around committing traffic law violations, we have no control, they're just wild, it's wild, the wild Indians of Oklahoma, and it's just ridiculous, the games that they play, and people are completely oblivious, uh, oblivious to the politics behind the scenes. They're stealing, in my opinion, they're stealing millions of dollars from the American people, the tax dollars from the government. For example, in my case, if you've watched my videos, uh, under VAWA legislation,
About my stalker, the whole VAWA protective orders I had,
grant
two of them.
to tribes.
And they made sure that there's no power whatsoever to them, so they can continue to terrorize the Indians.
And the chief of that tribe went to the McAllister News Media, and he was talking about how happy he was that he got the $9 million on 2022 amendment for the appropriations, so that they can have, funds for the services that they provide to the victims, so that they can prosecute non-Indians for violations of protective orders, and so then that was their position. They were like, yay, we got this money, so we got $9 million, right? But then in my federal case that I filed in federal court,
it's currently before the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Council
to see what they rule.
Argued that the tribes, none of them in America have jurisdiction, even under VAWA. So basically, he's saying, so what? We got $9 million, and we're saying that our tribe is jurisdiction over non-Indians if they violate the order that our codes issued. So what? So what? Congress said that they have that special criminal jurisdiction. The president signed that in law. So what? We argue. I mean, they're literally attacking the tribe's rights from within, and taking millions of dollars from the government, U.S. taxpayers' money. This is the scam. This is the politics. This is the so when they got mad over the McGirt ruling because somebody prosecuted an Indian for a federal crime, and it falls under the Major Crimes Act, and the Castro Huertas case stated that the feds and the state can share jurisdiction if a non-Indian is the perpetrator. Okay, because under VAWA, it's only for misdemeanors, right? And it doesn't, VAWA legislation, it doesn't, major crime acts like rape, kidnapping, murder, those are specific crimes that no tribes have jurisdiction over. But in this media lied and said that the tribes have jurisdiction over major crimes. Now, people that are ignorant, or I'm not saying ignorant, but they just don't know, they're not educated, or they just don't know, they just haven't paid attention to what the tribes have jurisdiction over. No tribes have jurisdiction over major crimes. And it has been argued, that's been presented in every case recently that's been for the United States Supreme Court. Major Crimes Act is federal, period, right? And so they're lying to the public to make them think that the tribes have jurisdiction over like murder and rape. Because back in 2020, when the whole McGirt case and the whole Castro Huertas case went before the Supreme Court, they were scaring the public. You go pull old articles from where the governor and people and politicians were trying to scare the public, like, oh my gosh, they're going to murder people and they're going to rape people, and their sentences at the tribes is so light. It's just, we're endangered. And so this is why the media is again telling people that they have jurisdiction over major crimes, and now they can go around and commit traffic law violations, and nobody's safe. And you know what that does? The hostility that's in the back of people's minds against Native Americans, making them like fearful of them. I mean, the social stigma. And this is the games that they do. Meanwhile, while the chief of Cherokee Nation is out in the public, talking about how, they're going along with this and the whole lie and deception the media is presenting. The the Cherokee Nation Attorney General was just nominated for a Northern Federal District Judge position. Okay, so while these tribal leaders are scamming and scheming and don't care what the harm they're doing to the individual Native Americans while they're presenting themselves as being the heroes for the Native Americans, they're rising the political ladders, and that's what happens when you get leaders in these tribes who are sellouts. They're sellouts to the establishment, they're sellouts to the American government, and meanwhile, you've got Native Americans just
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Hang on. Let me write something right now. Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, so that's what's going on, and I'm just really sad to see that once again they're out here. The media, these are the ones that I get mad at the most. It's like, who's getting paid? Who is getting paid to tell these lies to the public? The media's not. They're not taking it. They can read the case. Anybody can pull this case up. I'll put the link in the description. Anybody can read it. Go to the bottom of it. Why did they present to the public? Oh, by the way, the Supreme Court just happened to say that they don't agree that 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 nobody has authority over Indian municipal laws. They don't agree with that, and that's his position. So when it makes the Supreme Court, you can best bet that that's what they're going to rule. Okay, unless you come up with some other kind of law. So but they shouldn't allow any News to be trying to terrorize the public to make them think that Indians currently email address on there. He's real responsive, so darn well that that's not. But again, it's the whole mechanism of the.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
False idea of the public that
Okay, you too, sir.
not agreeing. And that's how they present in the media. Oh, the Supreme Court.
Okay, so that was the lieutenant calling back, and he gave me the email to the captain.
If you just read it, it's a very short, one page. Actually, it's like one paragraph on page 2.
That was really nice.
But I mean, it's like 4 paragraphs, right? And you read it yourself. It was the way they presented it to the Supreme Court is why it was denied. It's not the argument itself. And it just makes me mad that they just trick people like this. Anywho, that's it for now.
Okay, so in conclusion, the state of Oklahoma, the city of Tulsa was sued by a Choctaw Nation resident for issuing a traffic ticket against them. And so in district court, they dismissed it. This is federal court. So they appealed to the 10th Circuit. The 10th Circuit stated that the law that they argued apparently was not something that they agree that the city of Tulsa has jurisdiction over on Indians for traffic laws. So it's not the proper law to argue the case. I personally believe it was a dive case, and they are apparently in the background wanting to give tribal officers more money, increased police power out there. which, you know, the tribal officers, you know, depending on the size of their tribe in their Indian country, they should have enough police force, enough money, okay? But, you know, at the same time, when they act independent nation and they hide behind sovereignty when they violate rights of people, and they always claim sovereignty, when they get money from the federal government to help them with their services, I think that they should be regulated on what they're doing with that money, because there's a lot, not all, but there are some tribes who are very corrupt, and they take the money and they don't appropriate it. And then they're standing up there demanding that they be able to do whatever they want with the money instead of what it's issued for. And it's taxpayers' money, comes out of a specific fund of the government. Um, it's sad that there's not regulation, because you need to preserve the integrity of Indian authority. So when you have Indian tribes who are doing corrupt things, it makes people just despise tribes having jurisdiction, especially when you have politicians out there talking about how they're going to let Indians get by with crimes, and this whole scare tactic that they do. They need to be regulated if they're taking, you know, money from the federal government. Um, Anyways, because VAWA legislation is, for example, is written with allusion to holding people accountable if they use discriminatory practices when they get these grants. But the tribes are, you know, just all they care about is the money, right? And the state, what they care about is they want power over cases involving Indians if the non-Indian is the perpetrator, right? So now you have them out there increasing their police powers in the streets, which, you know, they should be able to pull over on people. So what the lieutenant said earlier was that they're not getting by with traffic violations, as the news media kind of sort of, they did say that they can only do that in tribal courts, but as people understand currently, the tribal officers don't have the ability to pull people over. And if a person does not have on their car a tag that shows that they're tribal, how is a tribal officer, going to be able to identify a car as a tribal member so that they know that they have jurisdiction to pull that over because that person's Native American and they're a tribal officer? You see what I'm saying? So not all non-Native Americans have tribal tags. I didn't before I relinquished my rights with my tribe. Um, so it just leaves this gap of the people thinking, oh my gosh, how are they going to get them to the tribal courts, you know, unless they have these officers out there pulling people over. So they didn't explain, as this lieutenant did, you know, that what they're doing is they're pulling them over until all this gets, you know, all the litigation gets done, until it gets all the way to Supreme Court, which has already ruled that they have full jurisdiction over non-Indians for municipal laws. It's not a crime. A traffic ticket's not a crime, of course, unless you don't show up in court. But what, you know, they didn't say is that if they pull them over, they call the tribal officer to come issue a ticket, which holds the officer up having to wait for a tribal officer to be available. And depending on how many officers they even have or how short staffed they are or whatever, they have to sit there and wait. Okay. They have to sit there and wait for a tribal cop to show up to give a guy a ticket. I mean, this is ridiculous, right? And so it does kind of make officers, if they see an Indian tag, a little leery to pull them over. He's like, oh man, I don't want to sit here and wait for a tribal cop to come. I'm not going to let this guy go and go after it. You know, when they're sitting there, if they're actually, you know, like on highways, when they're out there and they're got a police trap set up and they're just waiting to pull somebody over, you know, that's their whole thing to do, you know, is will they just let them pass if they see that Indian tribal tag, if they're speeding? You know, it's like, I don't see, you know, what it's just an, like, it doesn't give a full explanation. And so currently, no, they're not getting by with it. They call in the tribal force, but it's ridiculous because they didn't start this. They've been pulling people over until this case happened, and this case happened in 2018. And all the things, there's nothing in the United States Supreme Court that, one, gave any major crime jurisdiction, criminal jurisdiction, But that's currently, when you hear them say that they have something that they don't have, that is the first step to try to fight for that. So the tribes are trying to fight to get crimes under the Major Crimes Act back. They want that jurisdiction back, right? But I just don't see that's going to happen. But the media is lying for the tribes, claiming in this news on 6 Media article stated that they have the McGirt ruling gave jurisdiction to the tribes over major crimes. No, it didn't. No, it did not. Quite the contrary. The McGirt case, the guy that was prosecuted by a county for, I can't remember what it was. I think it was sexual rape or something of a kid. It was a very serious crime. It fell under Major Crimes Act, and the county and the state prosecuted him. And so they reversed his conviction, and he was prosecuted by a federal prosecutor instead, and he was convicted. But no, he was not prosecuted by the tribes. Tribes do not have jurisdiction of any crimes whatsoever that falls under Major Crimes Acts, and those are the serious violent crimes. They do not have such jurisdiction, and they're just lying to people all over again to make them afraid. Oh my gosh, they can get by with traffic violations, and they have the major crimes to prosecute. Oh my gosh, these Indians are going to do serious things. They're not going to be held accountable. This is the stuff they do. Anyways, so I just want to share this because as a Native American, I'm part Native American, and my fourth great grandmother, she was 100% Cherokee, and they've kind of stripped away the ability to even identify us. Like I have, I'm tribal blood on both sides of my parents, and my mother's, both of her great grandparents had tribal, but only one person was identified in the lineage, and they just kind of stripped away, the identity by reducing the ability to identify, certificate degree of Indian blood, and then they changed that if you're a tribal member, that's just a political classification. It has nothing to do with your ethnicity, so that you can't even claim to be an ethnicity. You know what I mean? Like, how are we supposed to argue that we're being discriminated against as being a specific ethnicity when we're just a political classification? I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's actually worse to be a tribal member. So if you're not a tribal member and you can say, hey, I am a specific ethnicity. Here's my blood DNA. I am Native American by blood, not by political classification, by being a tribal member. I am Native American by blood. And it's sad that they're doing that to Native Americans. And there's so many things that they do that are just so disgusting. But anyways, this is just another little saga in the struggle for power, specifically in the state of Oklahoma. I know there's struggle for power and jurisdictions and lands and everything else, and states across the nation. If anybody pays attention to what's going on to tribal people in the state of, in the nation, oh my gosh, it's so bad. They're constantly trying to deestablish tribes, and they did that in Oklahoma in recent years, and they're continuing to do that. I literally argued, this guy bought this development of land. It was like a whole little, it was like 16 acres. It was like this little subdivision by itself, and he came in and he bought it, and there was a road attached it was on the other side. It's not a part of his legal description of the same subdivision, but it was adjoined to his land, and he tried to take that entire road and claim it as his. So I sued the guy in federal court, and this guy argues that he does, because there's a statute in Oklahoma that says 69 section 646, and it says that nobody can take over lands. They cannot change roads. They cannot develop or locate roads or alter the width of roads, but for due process to all landowners, so that would be so affected, to have any property rights to it. So, oh my gosh, I argued that in federal court, and this guy, I cannot believe he did this, but he did. He literally argued in federal court that he does not have to comply with section 69646. He can conspire with the county commissioner to just violate that statute because it mentions Indian territories. In that specific statute, it says it includes Indian territories, so that in the protective rights of those lands are also in Indian territories. It's not solely for Indian territories, but the fact that he said that he's not going to comply with it because it involves Indian territories, he's basically saying that the nation that I live in, which is a classified, established, upheld so many times, it is an Indian territory, it's Indian country, it's on all the deeds. If you buy any land in these counties, it will say Indian country, right? and it's part of the legal description. But this guy tried to argue in federal court that this is not Indian territory, basically. And that was basically the county is refusing to comply with that statute over and over and over and over. They've already stole my land. I had a private drive. They stole my land. Currently, they're continuing to try to, these guys are trying to take over my land currently because it's a part of a public road and the county is allowing him to do that, and knowing that they're just disregarding the whole Oklahoma statute that protects lands and property owners rights in Indian country, because they're just like, yeah, well, we don't respect this as an Indian country, and that statute's just not going to apply. Well, they tried that was argued in federal court. But it's just, there's so many different things. I could go on and list all kinds of different types of situations where they're just attacking people's rights, Indian rights, and they just don't talk it. Not only do the media not cover it in the state of Oklahoma, they are so racist against Indians that all they do is present that, like the Indians are the bad guys and the non-Indians are the good guys, and they don't want jurisdiction over non-Indians. They're just and it's just so bad that they do that. So they're not going to cover the suffering and the oppression that the Native Americans are suffering in the state of Oklahoma. They're not going to cover it. There are some states where there's legal battles going on where they're oppressing Indian rights, and you'll see those in the news. Not much, but you'll see them in the news. But it's just so oppressive, and people are so unaware on the different ways that they attack Native Americans. And I don't think that these legislators who are going around in this legal battle over municipal laws and trying to, battle over the jurisdiction of powers, I don't think they're intentionally trying to just make the Indians look bad, but it's just the way they go about it. It just has that effect, and it's really sad that it happens like that. You don't go around and tell the public that Indians are going to be able to get by with violating traffic laws and not explain to them. They're not going to get by with that if until all the litigation is complete and they come to a final ruling within the Supreme Court. This is what's going to happen. The police will pull them over, and then the tribal officers will be called out to the scene, and then they will issue the traffic ticket. But it's just, they just leave it hanging like, oh my gosh, and because they're saying, well, it has to be handled in tribal courts, but then they don't explain how they're going to get it to the tribal courts. You know what I mean? And everybody who lives in Oklahoma knows that tribal cops can't pull over people. They don't pull them over. Like some states, if you go on a highway that's on a fee, now let me explain the difference between fee lands and trust lands. Trust lands in Oklahoma, these are basically, it's a state, so it's not really all the Indian reservations here. They're just territories where these tribes have their own jurisdiction over their people, right, within exception of criminal jurisdiction under VAWA. But there's some states that there's reservations that the only thing that's not solely operated by them, they have total fee title to that land, it's not in a trust with the government, is there's a highway easement through that reservation. And so there's battles of being able to, tribal cops being able to pull people over on their highways, and they do have that power. Tribal officers in those kinds of lands do pull people over if they're going through their nation on the highway, but they cannot arrest them. They can temporarily detain them to turn them over to proper authorities who does have jurisdiction over them. So let's say they suspect somebody's drunk, they pull them over, and they have to ascertain whether or not they're tribal or not before they can decide whether or not they can even do a search, because that's the United States versus Cooley case, where an officer actually got in a little bit of trouble because he pulled over a non-Indian and he was not able to use what he had searched his vehicle because he didn't have the proper authority. And so the United States Supreme Court ruled in 2021 that they do have the authority to temporarily detain somebody and then turn them over to the people who have jurisdiction to prosecute them. Okay. But here in Oklahoma, tribal officers do not just pull people over because this is not fee land. That's not the scenario here at all. Right. And so the cops not having the ability to pull people over, the only ones that can pull them over are, like the non-Indian cops pull people over. And so it's just, they have full jurisdiction to the municipal authorities, because see, the whole thing about it being a state, and it's the difference between fee lands and trust lands. All that was argued in the United States Supreme Court, especially in the Castro Huertas case. You can look that one up, go into the Supreme Court rulings of the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court website. Okay, that's enough. Website, and you will see that case that under no circumstances did they, like strip the state of municipal powers. It's just ridiculous. But anyways, please pray, people. Please pray for the people that they can just really rule in these cases that will just prevent these people to continue to play political games with, powers and having this effect on people. Anyways, and cops being afraid to pull an Indian over because he's going to get sued because they don't have jurisdiction. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. I mean, they've been pulling them over for forever. And now just all of a sudden, out of the blue, Choctaw Nation decides to say, you can't pull us over. Good grief. And I'm so thankful for Justice Kavanaugh, who has clearly made his position that, yes, they do have such municipal powers. And I just wish the news would present that when they talk about this, to let people know that the United States Supreme Court Justice has already ruled that, oh, by the way, Justice Kavanaugh has made his position very clear. And yes, they do have this jurisdiction, because that's what they should have done. I'm going to end this stream and I'm going to do some Bible reading here in a little bit if you're interested. I hope you have a blessed one. Bye. Oh, goodness.